Two Sides, Spiteful and Determined. Chapter 4. The Chase. The sun smiled through the curtains onto Scott's face. He became alert immediately once remembering the call from last night. He noticed a new notification in the inbox, a voicemail from an unknown number. The volume was just loud enough for him to hear. His heart dropped as he listened on. Later that morning the boys came to the house and everyone gathered in the living room. Grace was the only kid to still be living at home even though none of the kids were so little anymore. Grace had just turned 21 and was still adjusting to her life being an adult. She loved her family and the legacy they had, but she wanted to make her own path. She was a school-driven person unlike her brothers. Justin was 30. He couldn't wait to live on his own and have the freedom to do whatever he wanted. As soon as he was able to, he was the first of his siblings to move out. He never had the responsibility of being the oldest or the constant attention of being the youngest. Justin did what he wanted when he wanted, and it's always been like that. He wasn't stupid either, so Scott and Beth never worried too closely about him. Dewey, on the other hand, even to this day has the responsibility of being the oldest. With almost being 35, he still always felt at competition with his younger brother. Just breaking off his engagement with his high school sweetheart, the feeling of jealousy towards his brother started to come back. For some reason everything came easy to Justin but was a challenge with Dewey. Now the Bounties had one other kid who was the last-born son. He was younger than Justin but an older brother to Grace. Scott didn't like to talk about him much though, considering what happened. Beth was the only one to keep his memory alive. The Bounty men were always looked at as strong, tough, and always wanting to protect their family. The third son unfortunately couldn't follow in that same path. Every day something new would be added to the whiteboard. Today it would be what they could pull from the voicemail. So last night at around 4 a.m. we got a call from an unknown number saying they have reason to believe Antonio Mendonza is on the run. Which means the chase is on. Before anybody was even awake, I had the message sent over to police where we were able to trace the number. Scott then pulled out a map of Los Campos. The call was made from Eastern Farm Condo Development over in the east side. I say we hit this place and start asking questions. Did she leave any personal information? Dewey asked. Scott answered, no, she wanted to remain anonymous because it apparently can be a life-threatening situation. Which confirms our theory is correct that this man is very dangerous. Beth's nails clicked and clacked on her keyboard. If we can find the correct apartment, we could have a pretty good chance of finding a family member or even Antonio himself. This place sounds like a hidden gem and I don't think they'll be expecting us to hit it. Grace smiled. Dewey added on, especially after they tried to throw us through a loop. All right, suit up and we can talk about hunting for Tricky at the same time in the cars. Scott ordered. Beth read over her notes as she reached for her radio. Antonio and Tricky, what an iconic duo, shall we say?
Yeah.
Sure. Scott laughed from the other car. An iconic duo wouldn't leave each other's side. I definitely think they are still together. I mean, why else would we get a mysterious call from some girl? I bet she belongs to one of them. Beth stated.
Yeah.
I'm sure they pissed her off in order for her to give up information. Justin said from the driver's seat. If we can get to this mystery girl, then we would be golden. Grace added. Pulling up to this neighborhood right on the border of the east side was like pulling up to no man's land. Surprisingly, this condo development was fairly close to Salia's house that they were at yesterday. Scott directed them to park right next to this blacked-out truck with no plates. Grace, start passing out mugshots to surrounding neighbors and ask everyone you see if they recognize either Antonio or Tricky. Dewey, you go too and do the same thing. Beth looked in one of the windows but was met with a black fate. Justin looked over to his right to see a man in a hat hiding in the shadows. He called to Dewey over the radio, yo Dewey, check out that man over there at 3 o'clock, he looks suspicious as hell. 10-4. Hey. Guy in the hat. Dewey shouted. Grace jogged after her older brother to the mysterious man. Hey, man, we just got a couple questions for anyone we see walking the streets. He extended a handshake then showed his badge. My name is Dewey and this is my sister Grace. We are bounty hunters and we have reason to believe a fugitive is hiding out here. The man didn't say anything and slightly nodded. Grace handed him a wanted poster. Do you recognize this man? The man shook his head. His voice was quaky, but he muttered, nope, never seen him around here. Do you know whose blacked-out tin vehicle with no plates belongs to out in the lot? Grace asked. He replied, yes, that's my truck. Is there an issue? Well, not yet anyways. We have reason to believe the fugitive drives cars with your same description and switches them out with family members. Just to confirm your identity, we will need to see your license and registration to confirm the car is yours. Grace added on. It sits upstairs in my apartment, the man said. We found the owner of the truck. Dewey shared on the radio, all right man, come over and talk to my folks. If you truly don't know this guy then they'll let you walk, but if you do then we are going to have to ask more questions. Hey, man, how are you? My name is Scott, this is my partner in catching crime, Beth, and my other son Justin. Basically what's going on is we got an anonymous tip Antonio was on the run and we were able to trace the call back here. So if you could just show us some identification to the car to prove it's yours then we will be on our way. Beth's eyes followed the man's body language, trying to see what he was looking at behind them. His neck was turned to an apartment on the second floor. She could feel the presence of somebody watching. If he doesn't take us up there then we at least know the first apartment to start knocking on, she thought. As they followed closely behind the man up the stairs, Beth pulled Scott aside. I think this guy knows something and we are about to get some answers real quick. Scott nodded. The door opened to a dull environment with an older gentleman standing in the doorway. Good day, sir. Sorry to invade your pad like this. We just need to see some identification that this gentleman is providing for us for the unmarked vehicle downstairs. No hablo Ingalls, the older gentleman replied. Scott turned to his crew. We'll just wait till the other guy comes back then he can translate for us. Grace strolled around to the kitchen table to see some family photos hanging on the wall, just as the first man walked back in. Who are all the people in these photos, because none of them really look like you, she asked. Those are my Tios kids, so my cousins, he said, handing Beth an ID. Marcos Mendoza? Beth exclaimed.